Hey everyone, and welcome. We need to talk about something huge happening in medical science. You see, the way we test new medicines, the whole clinical trial process is, well, it's kind of broken. But there's a digital revolution happening right now to fix it, and that's what we're driving into today.
Okay, so our source material kicks off with this really dramatic line. And let me tell you, this isn't just for effect. It's signaling a massive shift. The end of an era, really. The old system has just become way too slow, too expensive, and frankly, too unreliable.
So why is the old model so unsustainable? Well, you just have to follow the money. Look at this number, $10 billion. That's what US pharma companies spent on trials in just 1 year. And that was way back in 2013. You can only imagine how much those costs have ballooned since then, right? With that kind of cash on the line, the pressure to find a new way of doing things is just immense. So let's break down exactly what's going wrong. What are these cracks forming in the foundation of the traditional clinical trial? And it's not just one thing. The problems are pretty much everywhere you look. I mean, beyond those crazy costs, the trials themselves are just so rigid. It's tough to recruit patients, the whole consent process is a nightmare, and all of this leads to data that's not always great quality. But the real kicker, it's just so hard to keep patients engaged and actually following the rules of the trial. Yeah, let's zoom in on that last point for a second. Patient adherence. This is a perfect example of how the whole system can just completely fall apart. I mean, a lack of adherence can totally derail a multi-million-dollar study. Get this, 40%. After just 150 days, that's less than half a year, almost half of all the patients in a trial have stopped following the protocol correctly. That is a huge failure rate, and it basically poisons the data right from the source. And here's where the domino effect really kicks in. To make up for that 40% drop-off and still get results you can trust, you have to recruit 200% more patients. Think about that for a second. You have to triple your recruitment efforts just to break even. That sends your costs and your timelines straight through the roof. But the industry isn't just sitting back and accepting this reality. The problems have gotten so massive that we've really hit a tipping point. This whole idea of a digital transformation, it's not some futuristic concept anymore. It is happening right now. You can see the market is already moving. I mean, since 2009, the number of clinical studies has quadrupled. And to keep up, the market for what's called e-clinical software just exploded. It's on track to be a $10.6 billion industry by 2024. The money is definitely pouring in. So who's pushing this change? A really big force is something called the Clinical Trials Transformation Initiative, or CTTI. It's this public-private partnership. The FDA is even involved, and they've been pushing the industry hard to adopt these digital tools. They're basically setting a new gold standard for how trials should be run. And you know what's really interesting? This isn't just a bunch of scrappy startups. We're talking about the biggest players in the world. Companies like Novartis, Otsuka, and Janssen. They're all in, aggressively adopting these new digital methods. They're teaming up with tech companies to decentralize their trials and, let's be honest, to get a major competitive edge. Okay, so what's actually in this digital toolkit we keep talking about? Let's take a look at the actual tech that's fixing those cracks in the foundation we mentioned earlier. First up, we've got the Internet of Things, or IoT. Now, in this world, that means things like connected inhalers or smart packaging for pills. These devices can automatically track if and when a patient takes their medicine, so you get real-time data that directly tackles that 40% non-adherence problem we talked about. Problem meets solution. Next up, blockchain. Now, you probably think of crypto when you hear that word, but its real power here is its core function. It's a secure, transparent, shared record book. And that is perfect for clinical trials. It's being used to manage the super complex process of getting patient consent and sharing data across a bunch of different hospitals and clinics. So what does that look like in practice? Well, it means you can create this unchangeable, time-stamped record of consent that everyone, the investigators, the sponsors, the regulators, can trust. But maybe even more importantly, it gives patients control over their own data, which is a huge incentive for them to actually participate in the first place. Then we have advanced sensors. And these are a total game changer, seriously. Instead of making patients fill out surveys about how they're feeling, you can use these invisible sensors, maybe woven into clothing or worn as a small patch, to continuously and objectively monitor things like heart rate, activity, even breathing. This gets you way higher quality data with way less hassle for the patient. And finally, wrapping it all up is artificial intelligence. AI is kind of the brain of this whole operation. It takes all this new data streaming in from the IoT devices and the sensors and makes sense of it. It can analyze these huge, complex data sets to find patterns a human would totally miss. This generates some powerful insights, and it makes the dream of fully remote, centerless trials a reality. Okay, this all sounds pretty amazing, right? But it also sounds expensive. So what's the actual return on investment here? Is going digital really worth the cost? Let's dig into the numbers. This slide really frames the whole argument perfectly. On one hand, you have the cost of going digital, which is usually a fractional, one-time investment in tools you can reuse. But on the other hand, you have the cost of a failed trial. We're talking tens of millions of dollars down the drain, not to mention the hit to a company's reputation. All of a sudden, that investment doesn't seem like a cost at all. It's more like essential insurance. And just to put these costs into perspective, think about this. Managing a single patient in a traditional trial costs, on average, $38,000. Now imagine scaling that up to hundreds or thousands of patients. You can see how even a tiny improvement in efficiency can have a massive financial impact. And the savings are really significant across every single phase of a trial. Digital tech can cut costs by 16% in the early phase 1 trials, a whopping 22% in the bigger, more complex phase 2 trials, and still 17% in the final, most expensive phase 3. These are not small potatoes. So the payoff here goes way beyond just saving a few bucks. This whole digital revolution streamlines the entire process, it minimizes the risk of a catastrophic failure, and it lets companies test more treatments at the same time. And maybe most importantly, it opens up these trials to whole groups of patients who could never have participated before because of where they live. So look, the technology is here. It's not a barrier anymore. It exists, and its value is crystal clear. Which leaves us with this final, really thought-provoking question. It's no longer a matter of if clinical trials will fundamentally change. The only question now is, who is going to lead the way?